Hey, friends. Well, welcome to episode 1 of Cold Blooded Serial. I am your true crime bestie, Tika. Before we get started into what makes Shelly America's most evil mother, let's talk about her childhood and teenage years. Now, most of the information I'm going to share with you was told by Shelly's stepmom, Lara, to Greg Olson, the author of the book, If You Tell. And friends, let me tell you, if you just need to know more about this psychotic woman, this is the book to read. There's comments given by Lara, by her children, and by her third and final husband. All right, so let's start from the beginning. The year is 1958, and a young Lara Stowling had just graduated from high school. She took a summer job at Battleground Washington's local bowling alley, Tiger Bowl. It was there that she met the tall and handsome Les Watson. Lara's only goal was to save money for college, but, sometimes the heart wants what the heart wants. And within 2 years of meeting Les, the two of them marry. And the morning after she gets married, Lara receives a phone call from an angry, frantic woman yelling, "When are you coming to get these damn kids?" Poor Lara is taken aback, I'm sorry, what? Who are you and what kids are you talking about? The woman on the other line was Sharon Watson. And no, not Les's sister, Les's ex-wife. So Sharon tells Lara, who's only been out of high school for 2 years now, how Les had promised to come get her children. Lara is so confused because she's wait, first of all, I didn't even know my husband was previously married. And secondly, I didn't even know he had kids. So let me go talk to him and see what the heck is going on. She goes to her new husband and she's like, "Hey, Les, I got this crazy woman on the phone, Sharon Watson. She's saying that you're going to be getting her kids. What's going on?" And Les is like, "Oh, yeah. So that is my ex-wife, and her kids that I promised to go get are actually my kids. Yeah, we have 3 of them. And you know what? While I'm being honest, I might as well come clean. When we first met, I know I told you that I was only 4 years older than you. Well, I'm actually 10 years older than you." Damn you! Now Les is like, my conscience is clear. I feel good. I got everything off my chest, holding the secret in for 2 years. Les tells Lara that he has to go get his 2 older kids because Sharon is an alcoholic and is dealing with depression. So poor Lara, of course, she feels betrayed. Who are you? How could you keep this information from me? One, that I'm not your first wife. I'm fresh out of high school, so you're my first husband. And 2, you have kids. I'm a stepmom now. So why wouldn't you tell me beforehand? But I don't know. So anyways, Lara is like, okay, well, you know what? I made a vow yesterday, for better or worse. Now, it's the fall of 1960, and Sharon Watson drives from Alameda, California, to drop off her 2 oldest children in Battleground, Washington. And guys, she never looks back. She drops them off, and she's like, all right, good riddance. And they never hear from their mom again. So you're probably thinking, how old are these kids, right? Michelle Lynn Watson is the firstborn, and she was born in Raymond, Washington on April 15th, 1954. And at the age of 6, she and her 3-year-old little brother, Chuck, moved to Battleground, Washington to live with her dad and stepmom. Now, you're probably like, well, where's the 3rd kid? Well, the 3rd kid is still an infant. So it's how recent did you and Sharon divorce? But they didn't say that in the book, guys, so I don't know. Let's fast forward to 7 years later. The spring of 1967. One day, Les and Lara just minding their own business in their house, and a homicide detective comes knocking on their door. He's like, "Hey, I'm from California. I need to talk to Mr. and Mrs. Watson." So Lara and Les step outside, and the homicide detective informs them that Sharon Watson had been beaten to death by her boyfriend in a seedy motel on Skid Row. Now, guys, listen, I've never been to Skid Row, but the one hotel or motel that sticks out in my mind on Skid Row is the Cecil Hotel. It's been known to be haunted, so I'm definitely going to do a deep dive later on about this hotel. Fun fact, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, back in the 80s, he actually lived there while he was doing all of his killing. And then Jack Unterweger was an Austrian serial killer who actually stayed at the Cecil Hotel in the 90s. Lastly, did you guys hear about Elisa Lam? Back in 2013, she was the young lady who lived there, and it looked like the place was haunted. She was on an elevator, and the elevator door wasn't closing, but she was like talking to someone, but there was no one there on camera. It was only her. And the elevator doors would like stay open until she walked away, and then they would close. And then when she would come back, they would open back up. It was just a really weird situation. So I will definitely be doing a deep dive into the Cecil Hotel. All right, back to Shelly. So this homicide detective tells Lara and Les that they need to come to California to identify Sharon's body and also to get her 7-year-old son that was in the motel when the cops found her body. So Lara and Les, Lara goes to Shelly to, tell her that her mom has passed away. And she says that Shelly, who is now 13 years old, had no reaction to the news at all. She just moved on as if her biological mother never existed. Listen, after her mom's death, Shelly began acting out and lying even more. But her lies weren't anything to send anyone a red flag. Shelly just didn't want to do her homework. So every time she had homework, she would just say, hey, one of my brothers destroyed my homework, or both of my brothers destroyed my homework. And then when Lara would be like, listen, I know that that's not true, then Shelly would throw a hissy fit and say that she's not going to go to school. It's not enough to make anyone think that she's going to grow up and become the monster that she becomes. After her mom's death, her dad actually began spoiling her a lot. One, she's his only daughter, but two, Shelly made sure to guilt trip him and would tell him how it's all his fault that her mom is dead. Let's fast forward to 2 years later. 1 month before Shelly's 15th birthday, it is March of 1969. And one afternoon, Shelly does not come home from school. Now, at first, Laura's not worried because Shelly never comes straight home from school, but she's usually home before dinner time. Well, now she's not. So Laura is worried and concerned, and she calls up the school to see if they know where Shelly is. And the school is like, oh yeah, earlier today, we sent her to a juvenile home in Vancouver, Washington.
I'm sorry.
Laura's like, why did you send her away and why didn't you contact me or Les? And the school is like, listen, I can't give you all of that information. I was just doing what I was told. If you need more information, you need to call this juvenile home yourself. So Laura's like, no, that's not good enough. I'm going to call the principal. So Laura looks through the phone book, finds the principal's house address and phone number, and calls him up at home. And she's like, hey, why was my daughter sent to a juvenile home and why weren't we contacted? And the principal's like, oh, no, Mrs. Watson, I'm so sorry, but I don't have the authority to tell you why she was sent. You really have to contact the juvenile home yourself. Laura, at this point, she's probably pissed off. So she calls up her husband and she's like, get home right now. I don't know what the hell's going on, but we have to take a mini trip to Vancouver to go to this juvenile home because Shelly's school sent her there earlier today. Les and Laura drive to the juvenile home. Once they're there, Les is like, I want to see my daughter right now. And the home is like, oh, no, sir, sorry. We cannot allow you to see your daughter or even talk to her. So Les is like, wait, why? And they're like, oh, we don't have the authority to tell you why. All I can say is that there's an open investigation going on and your daughter is involved. Finally, the superintendent of the home comes out and he's like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Watson, sorry that no one has given you any information. Well, the reason you can't see or speak to your daughter right now is because we have an open investigation because she said that you, Mr. Watson, raped her. And Les is like, no. My daughter must not even know what that word means because there's no way she would say that intentionally. And the superintendent's like, well, whether or not she knows what it means, she said it. And that's a very serious accusation. And we have to take all of our precaution measures to ensure her safety. Laz is like, this is ridiculous. I'm calling my doctor to run a test to prove that I'm innocent. He does that. His doctor in Battleground is like, yeah, send her to the local hospital in Vancouver and I'll be up there. You guys go home because the results won't come in for another 24 hours. So on the way back, Laura is like, listen, we know Shelly. And yeah, she lies, but she never lies like this. It's always like little lies, nothing life-changing. She's like, Shelly must have gotten this idea from something or someone. Like, there's no way that she just came up with this on her own. Once they're home, Laura starts tearing Shelly's room apart, searching everything, top to bottom, opening drawers, checking the closet. And as she's getting ready to leave Shelly's room, because she hasn't found any proof that can help her husband, her subconscious mind is like, hey, Laura, did you really check every crease and crevice of Shelly's room? And Laura's like, huh. Laura turns around. She looks at Shelly's bed and she's like, you know what? I didn't check her bed. And she walks over to Shelly's bed. She lifts up her mattress. And right there, in between the mattress and the box spring, is a magazine. And on the cover of the magazine, it reads in big, bold letters, I was raped at 15 by my dad. Laura's like, yes, we got her. Like, this is going to prove your innocence. So the following morning, they drive back to the juvenile home with the magazine as proof. But of course, that doesn't mean much. Like, it's a magazine that doesn't prove that she made this up. So they wait for the doctor. And when he comes, he shares his findings. And he says, this girl is completely intact. There's no bruising, nothing. She's never even been touched.
Yes.
They all get to go home as a very unhappy family. They decide to send Shelly to numerous family sessions and private sessions with a psychologist, but none of them were successful. Why? Because Shelly wouldn't even entertain the idea that something is wrong with her, that she might need to be fixed. Despite being confronted with the truth, Shelly remained adamant that nothing was her fault and nothing ever had been. Shelly refused to admit to fabricating the story of her rape. Per Laura, she didn't even grasp the magnitude of what she'd done to her father. Instead, she seemed happy to have tossed a grenade into the circle of her family and to have received the attention she craved because of it. Like, you guys, like, what a psycho. I mean, like, there's just no guilt there, no conscience. And that is such a huge problem. Anyways, after this stunt, none of the local schools would accept Shelly back to school because remember, you guys, she's only 15, okay? And the schools are like, no, like after the shenanigans that she just pulled with lying on her dad, no, she can't come back here. And she's like, you know what? None of these public schools are accepting her. We need to go private. The private schools are like, there is not enough money in the world that you could give us to accept your daughter. So out of desperation, Laura calls up her own parents in Hoodsport, Washington to take Shelly in. And based on the way Laura seems, taking on 3 kids while she's still young and just being supportive of her husband despite him keeping so many truths from her, I'm assuming that her parents are like really good people. But does Shelly care? With Shelly being the deviant that she is, Laura's parents quickly learned to walk on eggshells around her in fear of setting her off. Shelly was just being a rude teenager. I can't even say regular because she's not a regular teenager. But she liked to play mind games with people. So she'd go on her little warpath, and then all of a sudden, she would come out and act so sweet and would offer to help them wash the dishes. Soon as Laura's parents would walk out of the kitchen, she's like, screw this. And she would throw all of their dishes away. I'm talking pots and pans, plates, utensils, whatever was in the sink that needed to be cleaned, she was like, no, I'm not doing this. Then she would go back to being her evil self. And then she would fool them again. She would act nice and sweet, offer to help with the dishes again. And this time she would take the dirty dishes and take a dry towel and just wipe the dirty dish so it looks clean. But obviously it's not clean because you're not using soap and water, right? So I'm hoping that after that second time, Lara's parents were like, you know what? You're just done with kitchen duties. Before Shelly leaves Hood Sport, she decides to volunteer to be a babysitter because she swears up and down that she just loves kids. Oh. And how much kids adore her. So one night she decides to babysit, and instead of Shelly actually watching the kids and like playing board games with them, she locks them up in their room and barricades the door with heavy furniture. Needless to say, that was her last babysitting job. But that's not the last of Shelly being Shelly the Menace. With only a few weeks left before school was out and before she had to go back to Battleground, Washington, Shelly sees a neighbor outside and she was like, hey, did you know Grandpa, talk about Lara's dad, did you know Grandpa has been assaulting me? Now, she didn't say what type of assault. Thank God this neighbor didn't believe her and told Lara's mom. Lara's parents were like, listen, this little devil child needs to get out of here. Lara, we love you, but we cannot do this. And they sent her back to Battleground after she finished up her freshman year of high school. Over the summer, Lara was able to find a Catholic school in Beaverton, Oregon to send Shelly to. But, of course, no good things last long around Shelly Watson. After a few weeks, the sisters at the school called up the Watsons and they were like, listen, every weekend until school gets out, you guys need to get Shelly. She is not staying here any longer than she needs to. According to the sisters, Shelly would often wake up in the middle of the night screaming. And, I'm sure at first they're probably thinking like, oh my God, she's homesick and she's having like a bad nightmare, right? Because some people do have night terrors. So maybe this is one of them. But they quickly learned that Shelly was just being devious and just doing this to make everyone else around her miserable. She was caught multiple times stealing things from other girls. And then she even put broken glass in a classmate's shoe. And this is a tactic that she actually did to her little brothers when she was still living at home. Now, mind you, she attended this Catholic school during her sophomore year of high school. And near the end of the school year, the sister administrator at St. Mary of the Valley told both Les and Lara that they would not accept Shelly as a returning student. Lara says that they were willing to pay any amount to keep her there. And the sisters were like, there is not enough money that you could possibly offer us for us to accept your daughter here for a second term. That summer, Lara is like, what are we going to do with this little demon? And God answered her prayers because Shelly was able to manipulate her Aunt Katie, who is Les's sister, into taking pity on her by crying about how her mother was murdered, how her dad is abusive, and how her stepmom is mean to her. Aunt Katie was like, oh my God, not my one and only niece. You need to come up here, spend the summer away from your family, and just stay with me and my husband, Frank.
Yes.
Her aunt actually was like, you know what? Instead of just staying for the summer, why don't you just stay with us for the rest of the school year? And that's what happened. Shelly spent the rest of her junior and senior year in Murraysville, Pennsylvania, with her Aunt Katie and her Uncle Frank. But you guys, Shelly being Shelly, of course, nothing good, like I said earlier, nothing good lasts around Shelly. Within her 2 years of living with them, Kate and Frank fought so much that they ended up divorcing. Of course, Shelly's like, well, that's not my problem. Like, how am I the one who is being blamed for this? This is a you problem, and, maybe I just helped to shine light on the problems that you guys were having. Although they seemed happy before Shelly came into their life. This summer between junior and senior year of high school, 1971, Shelley was 17 years old, and her and Randy Rivardo began dating. After graduation in 1972, Randy stayed in Pennsylvania to save up money for college, and stay close to his family, of course. And Shelley returned to Washington to work as a nurse's aide. Yeah, let that sink in. A nurse's aide at her father's nursing home. But later that summer, Shelley's like, oh, I'm just really lonely. I miss my boyfriend. You know what? I'm gonna call him and see if he wants to come live with me. And that's what she did. So she calls Randy up and she's like, hey, I really miss you. Would you be willing to move to Washington with me? And Randy's like, well, no, because I'm trying to save up money for college. She's like, don't worry about it. My dad already has a job lined up for you. You can make money. And then, and if that's not enough, he'll also give you free room and board. So all of your money will just be going to your savings for college. And Randy's like, oh my God, like, I miss you too, babe. This is a perfect opportunity. Yeah, I think that sounds good. So a young Randy, like he's fresh out of high school. He drives from Pennsylvania to the state of Washington to be with who he thought was the love of his life. You guys, let me put this in perspective for you. A young Randy Rivardo, he's in love, he's excited, so he takes the drive to go be with his girlfriend from Pennsylvania to the state of Washington. Per Google Maps, that is a 1 day and 13-hour drive. And that's just like, that's nonstop. So that means, you're not stopping to get gas, you're not stopping to use the bathroom, you're not stopping to eat. So could you imagine how long that drive actually does take? Because we all know that type of road trip is definitely going to take longer than 1 day and 13 hours. Also, there was no GPS. This young man is using a paper map to take this route. I don't even know how he managed to do that, because I see a paper map and I'm like, listen, I'm not getting us 5 minutes away just looking at this map. Like, I thank God for, Google Maps, MapQuest, or Apple Maps, So, I just wanted to really let that sink in. And of course, it all sounds too good to be true, right? Well, it was. And shortly after he moved in, Les and Shelley began planning their wedding. Les even found a best man because Randy didn't know anyone yet. And at 19 years old, Shelley and Randy got married in 1973. And this, my friends, is the end of the episode. Please like, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for the next episode where we discuss the many marriages of Michelle Lynn Watson. Please feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.